That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm Shane Raymer. You're listening to That Sober Guy podcast, and we help people stay sober. If it's your first time listening, welcome. So glad you're here today. If you've been listening to the show for a long time, thank you for coming back. Always good to be here with you. Thanks for supporting us. Thanks for supporting my sobriety too. Man, it's been crazy. We got a great guest today lined up for you. His name is Nate Kelly. And Nate is in recovery from alcohol. He's 6 years sober. Talks to others in recovery who share their stories in the hopes of accomplishing sobriety themselves. And he's also just launched a podcast called the Sobriety Diaries. And we chatted a little bit before we got recording today. And I can tell he's a very passionate dude who's excited about sharing the platform and allowing other people to come on and share their story to help inspire others. So super pumped to hear some of his experience and what the Sobriety Diaries is all about. We're going to get to Nate in just a minute. First, be sure to check us out at thatsoberguy.com. You can follow us on Instagram at That Sober Guy Podcast. You can also join us on Locals. We have a great sober community over there. It's kind of like Instagram meets Patreon. You can help support us, be part of a growing sober community that is number one. First thing of importance, it's safe. And then in addition to that, it's going to help you stay accountable. We're all going to have some fun in the process. I think we just surpassed 200 active members in there. So it's so awesome. We're getting 5, 10, 15 people joining up a day. So I'd love to have you join right now. You can download the Locals app, or you can go to thatsoberguypodcast.locals.com. And both those links are in the show notes as well. Let's see. We got some hoodies, some shirts, all that stuff in the show notes at thatsoberguy.com. How to navigate the first 90 days of sobriety podcast digital course as well. If you're struggling, those first 90 days are so crucial. So it's a great resource. And then, of course, some meetings. Fourth Dimensioners meeting is on there. It's a nightly 6 p.m., 9 p.m., 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern meeting on there. And it's daily. I think they have a speaker on Saturdays. So another great resource. There's tons of stuff on there. Stay connected. That's the point I'm getting at, is we have to put the work in. We got to show up and we got to stay connected if we want to stay sober. And I couldn't be more happy today to have Nate on the show, and I'm going to welcome him. Nate Kelly, it's good to be here with you. You're coming all the way from Ohio, so we're talking some sobriety from Ohio to Cali, and Cali back to Ohio. Nate, it's good to see you today and have you on the podcast, man.
Thanks, Shane. Happy to be here, man.
Dude, the studio is looking legit, man. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I've been working hard on it.
Yeah, I could tell.
This is my newest addition right here, the sober neon sign.
Looks really good, dude. Where'd you get? Did you get that made, or how?
I did. Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, it's been a long couple of weeks with the launch, and basically working 2 full-time jobs. And I find myself up at night just scrolling the internet, finding things to buy and to better this to add to the studio. So yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah,
that's a good one, man. And I'm definitely guilty of that too. That well, I won't say aimlessly, because I feel like there's always a purpose in the stuff that I buy, but it's fun sometimes to like just kind of veg out a little bit and, scroll through some things and see what we can find out there. There's lots of good stuff. So yeah, I love that you mentioned you're working 2 jobs, you're grinding away. And you have this, well, you didn't say this, but I'm going to say it because I could see it and I can relate to it because I've been doing the same thing. Is you have this passion, man, to want to share your journey. You want to share it with others, help inspire others, and then hear other people's as well, man. So what's that been like? Just kind of grinding away and like launching this podcast. It's a big thing.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because time-wise, it is 2 jobs, but dedication wise, and it doesn't feel like 2 jobs because this is more of a passion project and it doesn't feel like work. Yeah. So that part of it, I think, is what's getting me through. And, there's starting to be a little feedback on the podcast and some positive reinforcement, and I'm building that confidence up. So there's definitely some momentum building. So that makes it easier on a daily basis. And I work a 12-step program, so it's just part of that sort of interaction with other alcoholics. And I need to continually give it away to keep it. So selfishly, there's a bit of an insurance policy on my own sobriety as well. However, the primary goal is to help those who may still be struggling. But I mean, it's been sort of a whirlwind of a couple of months, and I'm glad that there's some episodes finally out there, and that people can hear what we've been working on.
Yeah, good stuff, man. That's good to hear, and super excited for you. Congrats on the launch of the podcast, and putting in the work too, man. It's not easy. It's a lot of work to get things going, especially when you're working and doing stuff. And I think it's just a testament. Like when we're passionate about something, man, we go for it, And a lot of us in recovery are like that. We're creators, we're artists, and we love. I actually was just doing some post-production on another podcast I did, talking a lot about the same type of stuff. So let's kind of kick this off official right now. I have a question for you. Want to hear your take on it. Share something that you believe about being sober or getting sober that some people might disagree with.
I would say, I guess that being sober or that sobriety is simply not drinking or simply not taking drugs, which I was guilty of in early sobriety. I had no experience or no knowledge on a 12-step program or, sobriety or anything about the world that is so prevalent in my life now when I first got sober. So I was of that school of thought 6 years ago. And, I think to perhaps people, on the outside looking in, they may think that, but, I quickly learned that, to keep that addiction at bay. And for my addiction, it is a obsession of the mind that turns into a physical addiction to the drugs or alcohol. So to keep that at bay, I need to work on other things as well that I may have internally to rid myself of that malady. So I think that the larger picture or the larger issue for me is helping other people, living a better life that, if there was a fly on the wall or, your sponsor or your mom saw everything that you did, would she or would they be proud of it? So I think sobriety and recovery is a much larger sort of avenue or aspect of our lives than simply not drinking.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's like practicing these principles in all our affairs if we put it in sort of a 12-step manner. And so, everyone listening, Nate basically said being sober is simply not just not drinking. There's so much more to it. And I know for me, like that's been a huge aspect. It's like, I'll have 8 years this year, in September, and of not drinking. But like, that's just a small part of it for me. And for many of us, it's like, now how the hell do I live life on life's terms instead of Shane's terms? That's where the work comes in. And that's why we stay plugged in and we do the things we need to do. We show up, we connect, we go to meetings, we go to groups, like whatever it is that we need to do to stay plugged in. The not drinking thing is just a part of that. And it's a big part for a lot of people who are struggling, no doubt. I don't want to minimize it.
Sure.
But yeah, good stuff, man. So cool. If we kind of kick it off, like with your recovery journey, man, I want to hear a little bit about what that looked like for you. Where did drinking start? Where did it take you? And what's things looking like today, Nate?
Yeah, sure. I love that because you and I both, I think, ask our guests to do that. So I'm happy to do the same thing. Fair is fair. So, I talked to a lot of addicts who, maybe had a trauma or chaos or some sort of specific sort of pinpointable moment in their life that sort of led down a path of addiction. And that simply is not part of my story. You know, I had a great childhood. I grew up in small town Ohio, sort of rural America. You know, my parents are hardworking people, you know, blue collar family. It was pretty uneventful. Pretty uneventful on the outside, that is. Internally, that was a different story. You know, I am still to this day and can remember, you know, always sort of feeling, you know, just not a part of the group and distanced from my peers, especially in school, you know, whether it was the popular kids or the, you know, jocks or whatever it may have been. I always just found myself withdrawing from, you know, any group and just internalizing everything as a child. And that is hard for a kid to not have an outlet and to not, you know, understand perhaps things about myself, you know, as I continued to grow and develop and sort of figure things out about myself. You know, I realized that I was gay at a pretty early age. And, you know, again, in small town, middle America, that definitely wasn't something I was going to share with anyone at that point in my life. And I didn't even really, I would say, like I said, I knew there was a difference, but before I knew what it was, actually, I would say, you know, 12, 13, when, you know, you start to have sexual feelings and it's like you can pinpoint something. I was
going to say, I mean, that's like a tough age anyways, because you're starting to like develop and like, like you said, you're starting to become a young man. And so confusing as is, and then add that on.
Compounded it. Yeah. And again, not, you know, just bottling it up inside and, you know, sort of chalking up another thing to add to the list of differences. And, you know, always sort of was an effeminate kid, and bullying was certainly part of my childhood, not to the degree where it was, you know, physical or traumatic, but I certainly went to school every day anticipating getting picked on or bullied or pushed around or whatnot. So, you know, it was just sort of a lonely childhood. My mom will tell you still to this day that I was always a troubled soul as a kid. And I love her for that honesty, because it's true. And she knows best. And, I can sort of relate to that kid as I look back at him. But, you know, moving into high school, I guess drinking became an outlet at an early age. You know, freshman year, you know, I sort of got introduced to almost like alternative sort of party kids. And, you know, being from a small town, it was always anticipated, I guess, that we would drink at an early age. Was kind of thing that we did, was to get a case of Natty Light and go out to a field somewhere, or, you know, unfortunately drive around maybe, or whatever it was. If someone's parents were out of town, we'd crash their house. But it was just sort of, you know, unfortunately, like what we did in small town America was to start drinking at an early age. And I was looking forward to it, man. My sister is 3 years older than me, and she went to Ohio University, which is known as a party school. And, you know, I couldn't wait to get down there and stay with her and see what it had to offer. My parents were fairly, lenient, you know, but with still rules, but they were going to let me go and stay with her on campus when I was a sophomore. So, you know, the anticipation and like the lead up to the weekend and like, what's the plan? What are we drinking? What, you know, where's the party? It's all of that like planning and that, you know, that obsession of the mind that I talked about that led me to basically drink alcoholically from my first drink, which was there on campus at OU, my sophomore year of high school. So, you know, I woke up and basically a pile of vomit with a hangover that no 16-year-old could probably handle. And I couldn't wait to do it again, you know, and thus started the life of an alcoholic. You know, I was in high school at the time, so I definitely wasn't a daily drinker, but it was always a, topic of conversation. Where's the next party? Who's buying the beer this weekend? Can you believe she did that when she was drunk at the last party? Always talked about and always sort of anticipated from that, like I said, from that first drink. So I liked OU so much. I took my budding alcoholic self there for my own college career. So,
nice.
I, as we do, but I muddled through, I guess, the academic side of life at a major university, but I was certainly more focused on the social aspect of things and the party side of life on campus.
How big of an issue do you think is alcohol when it comes to college and college life? I mean, it seems like it's like such a big thing, and it seems like it's a big issue. I didn't go to a big college. I didn't really do much college. Myself, but I have a lot of friends and even family and stuff who's been, been to big schools, local schools. And it always seems to come back to that. There's like, and of course we see it in media and movies and stuff too, but the college scene, it's like, you're supposed to go to college and like go and just like party. And it's like,
this is what you do.
It's totally acceptable, and it's like, man, like that's got to have a huge impact on these young men and women who are like trying to find themselves. And then boom, like you find yourself totally lost. I mean, was that kind of you relate to that? I would imagine
100%. I was completely ill-equipped to deal with life as a young man coming from, a small town in Ohio that was, a budding alcoholic, and I didn't have any life skills. And as I would realize those and feel, ill-equipped or inept in some sort of aspect of life, or felt overwhelmed with my college career, working part-time and trying to pay bill, it's like all of a sudden you're responsible for your own life. It definitely factored into it. And I think, to your point, like the movies and the TV shows and the music normalize the party scene and alcohol so much that I think, again, it's almost, I don't want to use the word expected, but like anticipated, when you get to campus, that's what's going to happen. And like accepted too. It's just like a normal, it's like, okay, cool. This is what we're supposed to do, and then, it's okay. And they, well, I'm not as bad as that guy over there. We've all heard that one too. But anyway, I didn't mean to derail us, but I just wanted to kind of point that out. But, so where does it go from there? Like you're in college and you're kind of trying to figure things out, and what happens after that? Yeah, I think it's just sort of elevated to the next level in college, without a drunk-a-log or dragging you through that 5 years. I will say in college is when I started realizing consequences of my drinking. I got my first DUI. I got, I tended to get mouthy when I drank, and I had no right to. I mean, I have a hoodie on, but I can barely defend myself, Shane. I'm scrawny, but I sure thought that I could, and I would mouth off to anyone at a party. And I've several times was knocked out at parties and woke up in a paper towels, bloody paper towels, and broke my nose several times, and reconstructive surgery later, and yada yada. No lesson learned. So the consequences started building up at that point, and like I said, the drinking was definitely elevated to the next level. I was drinking on a daily basis at this time, but still socially in college. When I graduated, I moved here to Columbus and started working in the restaurant business, and started seeing some success in the management side of things pretty early on, and ended up progressing through the ranks of general manager and corporate training team, and I was on a traveling training team that for a company that was sort of booming at the time and opening restaurants all over the country. And I was the head of the training team. So we would sort of just cruise around the country with a wake of destruction in our past and party all over the place. And I think, I don't think it's a negative connotation of the service industry, but it's definitely sort of a, part of the lifestyle of that industry. And it's sort of definitely chewed me up and spit me out for sure.
My wife and I were both servers. My wife is a hairstylist. So while she was going, to school for that, and I was just doing whatever I was doing, we were both serving tables, and that was the lifestyle, like straight up, like you partied with your crew and you had a good time. And I mean, you're right. It's not, I don't think it's a negative connotation so much. It just kind of is, it's just, that's just what you do. So, so, I mean, you're doing that. Where does it lead to? I mean, was that what's next?
And it ended up leading to a job opportunity in Baltimore. So I was, have in these successful positions along the way, and I was afforded an opportunity as a multi-unit manager in DC and Eastern Maryland. So I took on a patch of 10 restaurants, and I will say that it was just a complete culture shock from your, blue collar, small town, Ohio, born and bred white boy to like the urban side of DC and Eastern Maryland and Northern Virginia. Just complete culture shock, compounded by the fact that I knew nobody in Maryland. And, this is really when the drinking turned to a more miserable and like isolating, depressive sort of drinking, as opposed to like the fun and social drinking. And this is also where I would wake up and start drinking booze instead of coffee. And, I was able to do the majority of this workload from home. So I would, wake up to some vodka and Chardonnay and pop on some conference calls and take a nap and wake up and get drunk again. And it was this weird, vicious cycle of getting drunk like 3 or 4 times a day. And then like taking these little like micro naps during the day and like doing it all over. And it just sunk into this horrible isolation and depression. I was planning on coming home for the holidays after about a year in Maryland. And I had this like nagging, dull headache for about 2 weeks. And it was almost like a stiff neck is what I thought that it was. Like I slept on my neck wrong. We've all done it 100 times. So I just kind of like forgot about it and was just going about life. And I made it back here to Ohio and was at my sister's house. And traditionally we had this big New Year's Day party at her house. So it was New Year's Eve and we were there sort of cleaning the house, prepping food, wrapping presents, just prepping for the next day. And all of a sudden it felt like I got hit in the head with a hammer and like my body goes limp. The right side of my body is numb. I fall halfway to the ground and pull a chair over. My vision is gone. I can't speak. Of course, people, were terrified. Had no clue what was going on. So we get to the ER immediately, which side note, I have to call my sister out on this because she drove me to the ER and she pulls up to like the unloading dock and it was like, okay, go on in and I'll park the car and I'll be in a minute. I'm like, bitch, I can't see. I can't walk.
Yeah, you need to get me a damn wheelchair.
Yeah. But anyway, anytime I get the chance to bust her balls on that, I do it. But
classic brother sister.
Yeah. So we get into the ER and they prioritize us and the nurses are rushing around and the doctors, are focusing on us. And, at this point, I guess I didn't understand the severity of it, but I guess long story long, I had a stroke at the age of 32 as a direct result of my alcoholism. It was nearly 2 decades of just brutal, partying and beating my body up and not listening to my body and its cry for help and just, like I said, that misery, that isolated drinking, that 3 Magnum bottles of Chardonnay and a pint of vodka a day will do that to you. So I spent 6 weeks in a bed and in the neuro ICU and inpatient rehabilitation. I learned to walk again at the age of 32. Thankfully, I didn't lose any brain function or vocabulary, but it was definitely a long road to recovery. And this is probably the point where a non-alcoholic person would have never picked up another drink, right, Shane?
Yeah.
However,
there's the caveat to that, folks.
Yes. As you and I know, I wasn't quite done yet. Wow. And as I lay in that bed for 6 weeks, it is sick and it turns my stomach to think about it. But all I thought about was what my first drink was going to be when I got out of the hospital.
After you just almost died. Yeah. Crazy, man.
Yeah. And that is the severity of where my disease took me. And, if there are people that can relate, I'm sure that, there are depths that you go to in the disease of addiction where, you think that you will never go. Yeah. And I would say that was probably the lowest one. And, like I said, wasn't quite ready yet. But at this time, or actually a few months prior to that, my best friend and sort of, BFF partier, but really so much more than that. I mean, her and I had been through so much together. It just so happened that we both were alcoholics. But at this point, she had started working a 12-step program, and she had started sort of her road to recovery. And, I was kind of mad at first because that was my girl and my right hand partier. And, are you really not going to drink forever? Like, what? Come on. But then all of this had sort of happened and she's kind of just did it in like the most perfect way where she would kind of just like highlight portions of her own life that got better because she wasn't drinking and just maybe suggest that I go to a meeting with her and never like look down upon the fact that, I had this serious medical trauma and decided to continue to drink and never judged me for it. And, just was always there for me. And eventually with the sort of help of my family and just an utter disgust in myself, one day and I don't know where it came from. I do know where it came from, a power much greater than myself, but there was just a day where I became willing to throw my hands up, and my sister was at my apartment and I was just brushing my teeth. And as most alcoholics know, like you can't really brush your teeth that well because you're gagging all over the place. But there was this moment of clarity where I looked up in the mirror and, I just sort of saw like the last 2 decades flash before my eyes. And it was like, how did we get to this place? And what are you doing? Yeah. And I walked out of the bathroom and I said to my sister, let's do it. And unbeknownst to me, she had been sort of researching rehabs and had some contacts ready to go and some people lined up in her back pocket. And we were in the car 30 minutes later on the way to an inpatient treatment facility. Wow. And I spent another 6 weeks there in their inpatient program in detox, and then moved on to the inpatient side. And I went to a state-funded rehab, and I
It's all good, man. You're doing great, bro. Doing great. I know it's such a because we don't talk about these things a lot. I don't know if you're like me. We do, but especially being so open about them, and we have to, it's almost like reliving it sometimes. And that was actually the question I was going to ask you as you were kind of saying that is, I share some of what rehab is like. I've done a couple podcasts about it. And I get that question a lot. I think people are curious, like I mean, let's kind of pause on that part. Like what was rehab like for you, if you could describe it?
Yeah. I mean, you go there terrified. I went there terrified of the unknown. And, at the time, I think admitting that I was an alcoholic was more like tragic in my mind than living that life of misery for the 2 decades prior. So it was definitely that leap in that like unknown that was, anxiety ridden for me. But the reason I got emotional was because, the place saved my life 100%, and I wouldn't be here. And, whatever preconceived notions I had about people prior to going in there, and whatever sort of I thought about myself on the outside prior to going in there, I was with IV drug users that came off of living under a bridge for the last 6 months, and people that came straight out of corrections, and people that on the outside didn't look like me, or that I thought that I would ever identify with or have a connection with. And these are people in my life that I relate to the most, and that we were all the same and all there for the same reason, and all ready to make a commitment to live a better life. And
isn't that so crazy too? Like how there's so many different personalities and people from all different walks of life, different, from different places. We look different. We've had different experiences, but we have this one damn thing in common. Cause I experienced the same thing, bro. Rehab was crazy. And just to kind of relate real fast, when you said, cause I started having flashbacks when you were describing it a little bit, and I've been thought about this in a while, but when you said, how the hell did I get here? How did I remember being in the bathroom, like the first couple of days I was there in detox, and just going like, God, where am I right now? How did I get here? Like, how did it get to this point? Because we think we can control it. We think, oh, I got this, man. We'll figure it out. We're good. And then all of a sudden you're thrown in this environment with 30 other random people, who all different backgrounds and whatever. And you start, not everybody gets along great, but like you do make a lot of good connections, and you find something in common. And I think it's even as I'm talking this out right now, it's a testament to human connection. It's a testament to being connected to somebody and relating to somebody and being able to communicate what the hell is going on, what we're feeling. And it's so, so important, man. So important.
Absolutely. It is really the crux of my program, and probably the most powerful thing I've ever been a part of in my life. I will say, I guess in full transparency, I just didn't go in there and have a great experience. It took time to settle in and get used to my surroundings. And, I probably thought that I was better than most of the people on day 1, 2, 3, until you get sort of knocked back and you realize what, the severity of the situation. And like I said, what we are all here for, which is the same thing, and to commit to live a better life and sort of figure out this disease that we have. But man, I am so grateful for that place.
Yeah. So how long were you in the treatment facility for? Was it a total of 6 weeks?
It was. Yeah. It was a total of 6 weeks. I think a normal round would be 5 weeks, a week in detox, and then the 4-week inpatient, but they were sort of overcrowded when I was there. So they didn't have a bed ready for me, on the inpatient side. So I stayed in detox for 2 weeks, whereas it would normally only be a week, but 6 weeks, inpatient. I left there 2 days before Thanksgiving. My friend, whom I spoke of earlier, who got me started on this path, picked me up from rehab. We went to my apartment. I dropped my bag off. I took a shower, and we went to a 12-step meeting. So
nice.
I took the advice and I took the direction of those who had a little success in the program, and I was willing to be teachable and sort of take their direction. And I did that. And that was My last drink was October 9th of 2015. And nice. I've, by the grace of God, been committed to that program ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I love that. And congratulations, number one, for sticking with it. And congratulations for having the mindset in that tough moment to take the advice. That's one of the things you said. I took the advice. I listened. And that's what, in my own experience and with so many people that I talk to, is one of the hardest things is we think we got the shit figured out. I'm not even close to having it figured out. Thank God. And I remain teachable too. That's another thing you said. Yeah. So like when we can humble ourselves and just kind of step back and go, man, like one of my favorite things to say these days, 3 words, I don't know. Like, I don't have to have all the damn answers.
And it's so freeing. It lifts so much pressure off of you. If you don't have to know everything, you don't have to have all the answers, and you can just ask for help. Yeah. If you just ask for help, it's a new life. I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah. So, one of the things, like when we come, so rehab, treatment, whether it's inpatient, outpatient, whatever it is, it's new. You have a lot of hands-on help. You got a lot of connection. You're meeting new people. You have counselors. And even if somebody is listening to this and they're not going to, they didn't go to a rehab, or maybe they just tried to do 12-step on with a mentor, a sponsor, whatever. I think this question I'm going to ask you kind of applies to the same thing. Like, once we go through that, like, once I got home from treatment, it was like, holy shit. It was almost like when we had, my wife and I had our kids, or our first daughter, actually. Everything's cool in the hospital. And then you got nurses coming in and helping, and like everyone's there. And then all of a sudden you got to go home, and you take this baby home, and you're like, holy shit, what are we doing? It's kind of the same concept when we get sober. So like, what did that look like for you once you got home and you had to re-enter into this new world, this new Nate now? All of a sudden, who the hell am I? And what do I do? Like, what was that like?
It's a great question, because I live alone. So, their family and friends were worried that, I was unsupervised, for lack of a better word. But, again, I remained willing to take direction. And when I threw my hands up that day in the bathroom, I left them up for a long time. And there are still things that I have not taken control of, and I probably don't plan ever to do so, because I lost the privilege to handle certain things in my life, because I don't know how to handle them. And it's not my decision, really. If I'm trying to call all the shots and control everything, for me, it just leads to, failed expectations. So the more I can just step back away from and let things happen, and just sort of react and live almost like around what's happening, the better for me. That's good. My stress level is reduced, et cetera. But I think just the fact that I got a sponsor early on, and was on the phone a lot. I went to 2 meetings a day. I didn't go back to work after rehab for probably 6 or 8 weeks. So I went to at least 2, most times 3 meetings a day. Wow. I had a new dog at the time, so I was at the park a lot. I think for me, it just having as little idle time as possible was important to keep my mind busy, and to keep physically busy was, I think, the most important thing.
So you kind of found having an agenda, a schedule, I guess is probably a better way to put it. One of the great things you say early on, you got a sponsor or a mentor, or, somebody depending on what. I'm an advocate for whatever program works for anybody. As long as it works, that's the most important thing. We're all a little different. I don't push one way or the other. So I tend to kind of, you can use whatever terminology you want, but accountability is the key, I think. And, that's kind of what Nate is saying here, guys, is like, he did the work. Like, he took the advice, he listened, he didn't try to have all the answers, didn't try to have everything figured out, and just took the advice and did the simple things, especially in those first 30, 60, 90 days is so, so crucial. So you're doing the work, you're going through, and when did you say what was your sobriety date again? 2015?
Yep.
Okay, got it. So let's see. We're pretty close, man. We're pretty close actually in sobriety date. So
yeah.
What is life like today, Nate? Like, what's it looking like?
Oh man. Yeah, it is. Listen, life is life, things are going to happen, and it's not, rainbows and butterflies all the time.
Yeah.
Things happen in sobriety. There are stressful situations. There are, death and love and all the things still happen in life.
Yeah.
I am just now equipped to deal with them. And, if I think back to how the story started as sort of that kid who didn't know what his feelings were and didn't know how to relate to people and didn't know how to really function in society, is a complete 180 from now. Like, I sort of thrive on hearing people's stories and sharing my own, and being able to reach out to I guess strangers, for lack of a better term, and really finding that connection, to your point. And we recorded an episode yesterday, and I was talking to a young lady from Vegas, and we were just in awe of how, as addicts, we are just willing to share like the most intimate and vulnerable times of our lives and details about ourselves with other strangers, in the hopes that, we can connect and that we can relate and that we can, help ourselves in some way. So I think that is huge now. Staying connected to the recovery community is my number one priority. And that is sort of, I guess, how the podcast was born and how it led me here to you today.
Yeah. What about in just doing some of the work, spirituality, meditation, that connection to something higher? Has that been a pretty big part of your recovery? How has that helped? What does that look like?
Yeah, it sure has. I was able to, get in touch with and find a higher power for myself early in recovery. And, I think not growing up a religious person or really understanding the difference between religion or spirituality before understanding a little more about the program that I work is, it was truly eye-opening. And, the group of AA was my higher power for a while, because those were the people that I went to see 2 or 3 times a day. Those are the people that I was taking direction from and sort of wanted what they had. So, it was probably almost a year before I was really in tune, I guess, enough with my own, recovery to sort of seek beyond that and come to terms with and find my own higher power. But my spirituality and I do meditate, although not as much as I would like to, because my day is always so much damn better when I meditate in the morning. But I like to pretend like I don't have time to do it every morning.
Me too.
So therefore, I would say, it's probably 2, 3, 4 times a week, but it's definitely still a focus. And like I said, certainly feel better when I do meditate, but prayer and meditation and the spiritual side of things is paramount in my recovery.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm the same. Like I really do my intention is always great. Every morning it's some gratitude. It's usually, walking the dog. He's actually walking by right now. I can hear his little footsteps there. But walking the dog. And when I walk, his name's Brody. When I walk Brody, that's kind of like I'm able to drop into this meditation state almost. And I kind of prepare my mind for the day. I pray a little bit. I'm kind of seeing, what needs to be reset in my mind, and then just kind of be with it, and sometimes I'll listen to a little music. Sometimes it's nothing. But what I want to point out here is something that you said, we don't do it every day. And if you don't, I don't know if you're like me, but I can tell when I don't do it. I'm like, all of a sudden I'm off for the day. I'm like, dude, what the hell is going on? Oh, yes. That's right. I didn't meditate. I didn't walk the dog. I didn't start with gratitude. Like it makes a big difference.
Absolutely. I can 100% tell.
Yeah. So one of the things and I get a ton of inquiries for articles and podcasts and, different things going on. I've been getting, many article, requests or, press releases about high addiction rates, high alcohol rates in the gay community. I know that's something we are going to hit on a little bit today. What's your take on that? What does that look like? What are some of are you offering, some of your insight through the podcast on that? What does that look like?
Yeah, we do. We've touched on it in, I think 2 episodes, and it's weird that I can sort of relate it to the story in our conversation today. If I think back to myself in that sort of awkward state of just loneliness and internalizing all of those feelings, and it being such a big part of who we are. And, living a lot of times with it only in our own brains. And, that tends to, and sometimes if you live a closeted life, there is a lot of research that's done that, we tend to develop almost an internal homophobia against ourselves and our own sexuality. And that tends to, throw off our brains. And it's just something that is very hard to deal with. I think,
it's almost like trauma in itself.
Yeah,
it
is.
Like some trauma.
It's definitely a trauma. I think we can all agree that most people in the LGBT community experience some discrimination in some way throughout their life, or, it could be physical, it could be emotional, whatever it may be.
Well, you said you were picked on as a kid, right?
Right. Yeah. I think it's,
that does something to a kid, man, no matter what.
Any statistics in front of me, but I would imagine that the rates of that are very high.
Yep.
And I think that, those few things paired together, along with, just the, you don't have a lot of gay peers. When you're in those sort of formative years. So, a lot of things are internalized, and I think we just turn to drugs and alcohol at an early age to alleviate some of that, and to touch again on sort of the normalization of drugs and alcohol as almost a self-medication tactic. I think tends to contribute to that. I will say, and like, gay men tend to, actually, I don't want to say that. Sorry. That's
cool. Yeah, no, it's all good.
I don't want to generalize, but, so yeah, I think like that, the biggest thing would be those feelings of difference and the, kind
of not fitting in, like just not being, Yeah. And I just want to tell you, man, like I'm super proud of you, bro. Like for speaking up, for speaking out, for sharing your story, and being so open about it, because I can imagine it's not an easy thing to go through. And then not only that, to actually speak out publicly about it. that's a whole nother ball game in itself. And then to create a podcast about it, and not about that in particular, but just, being and going through that, that's a part of your story. So that comes out in your story. It comes out in the podcast, of course. And so one of the things I want to ask you is, I know that there's another young man who's going to listen to this, who's struggling with that, who's out there, who feels different, who doesn't know, what is going on, and what advice, what inspiration would you share with him today, Nate? And then we'll get into the podcast. I want to talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah. I would say that it gets better, and you will find yourself and you will find your people. Hang in there and, just do you. Do not let outside sources and those around you dictate your own beliefs and your own morals. Stick to your guns and, it gets better.
Yeah. Good, man. Good. I love it, man. Thank you. I know, sometimes that's hard. What advice would you get, but on the spot like that? But I think it's perfect. I think it's as simple as that. Like it like everything is impermanent. Everything gets better. Joy, happiness, sadness, anger, all that stuff is, it doesn't last forever. This too shall pass, and so if Nate can get through it, if I can get through my own stuff, like you guys can get through whatever it is that you're going through too. And so, good stuff, man. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk,
bringing it up.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let's talk a little bit before we wrap up today about the Sobriety Diaries, man. Like you had this idea, you wanted to launch a podcast. And I think I congratulated you on that in the beginning, but congratulations again. You're going to be having great guests on to share their story and help kind of spread the word. So how's that going? Tell us a little bit about the show. Where can people find it at? Go ahead, man.
Yeah. So it started on my YouTube channel, and I just started these almost just really informal vlogs of talking about, my own story and most of what I told you today, and just sort of in a very different setting.
Yeah.
Born of the same idea and the same need and want to get my story out there, and with the hopes of helping other people.
Yeah.
But, I sort of have always been a fan of podcasts, and as I was, producing these videos and the audio, and, I'm a huge sort of tech geek, and, I just really had this like aha moment one day, and, I can't even really explain it. It was during the pandemic, and I had a lot of extra time on my hands, and it just sort of like dawned on me that this would sort of lend itself absolutely perfectly to the podcast format. And, you can only talk about yourself so much. So like, I would have like topics to the vlogs that I would do, whether it was like, I was a terrible employee as an alcoholic, and then how I evolved into being like a reliable, dependable employee. And so I would like categorize them. But again, you can only really talk about yourself so much. So I'm like, how can I create more content, and have other people involved? And so it just sort of like dawned on me that it's like the perfect outlet for, or the podcast format is the perfect outlet for it. Yeah. So really, I wanted to make sure that I did it in the right way. So honestly, I spent about like 4 to 6 months just really like diving into my favorite podcasts. Yours was one of them. And just making sure that I did it in the right way.
Yeah.
And understanding the format and the ins and outs and the equipment and what I would need, and, making sure that I did it in the right way. So when I felt like I was sort of ready on that front, I threw up some ads on Reddit asking for folks who had been sober for at least a year and would be willing to share their story in the podcast format. And I would say in the first 48 hours, I got probably 75 emails.
Nice.
So that was like my first, like, okay, this could be like, wow, holy shit, this could like be something. So I started recording fairly quickly after that. And, you know, my goal is to be able to highlight and share as many people's stories as possible. I think that like increases the demographic of people that we can reach and that we can perhaps help in turn. So yeah, I mean, we were sort of talking before we were recording, but it's a lot of work, but it's the most non-worky work that I've ever done and the most fulfilling and most, it doesn't feel like work because I'm able to sort of lay my head down at the end of the night and know that our goal of helping people is already happening. People are starting to reach out already, and we've gotten some positive feedback, and I just really couldn't be happier. So
good, man. Well, congratulations again, dude. I know how much work it is. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of passion to continuously do this. Also too, I think that God has provided you a platform, now to reach other people and speak and share your experience. And there's some really solid purpose in that. And you're going to help a lot of people. I can see it right now. You know what I mean? Moving forward with this and being able to relate, to especially some other young dudes out there who have struggled with the same stuff that you struggled with as a kid, and then going in through college and all of that, man. It's a really cool thing, man. So congratulations again on that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
One quick question. So are you looking for guests? Do you have a guest? Like, how do people reach out to you? Like, what does that part of it look like if they want to connect or just follow the podcast? I mean, let's give some takeaways here so folks can connect with you.
Yeah. Amazing. So you can go to the sobrietydiaries.com and you can apply to be a guest on the show. We are actually accepting sort of anonymous written stories as well. Nice. For an exciting upcoming project. And all of our links to social media are there as well. Check us out on Instagram at the Sobriety Diaries Pod. But like I said, at the sobrietydiaries.com, everything is listed there. Show times or show dates, I guess, where we upload, and all of the apps and platforms where you can listen on.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to put all those in the show notes too. So everyone listening, it's easy. You can just click on them right there as well. Make it as easy as possible. Nate, yeah, so good to have you on today, man. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks for being so open, so honest. Any last thoughts before we close it out officially?
Hey, I said that your show was one of them, and I meant that. So this has been like a long time coming, and this is sort of like something that has come to fruition for me. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can keep in touch. And if I send you an email, try to email me back.
Hey, you got it, man. This has been great, and I'm super happy to be a part of that, man. That's pretty damn awesome. So thanks again, Nate.
Thanks so much.
All right. I hope some spoke to you today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Appreciate you guys. Share the podcast with a friend. You can check us out at thatsoberguy.com. Connect with us on Instagram at thatsoberguypodcast. It's the sobrietydiaries.com. And then we'll have all the links. You can follow Nate actually on IG at the Sobriety Diaries Pod. And once again, all those links will be in the show notes. Love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Peace, love, and respect, and keep your blood clean.